We today have the chance to have three, experts in the field of both regulatory and ethicals, coming from different horizons, and to share their thoughts with us. And it's really a chance to have this diversity. And as always, Steve reminds us, it's all about the community. It's all about collaboration to bring it together. So I would like here to have each of our panelists to introduce themselves and to bring, their why they are here regarding the virtual human twin. So shall we start with Emmanuel?
Okay, hello everybody, and thank you, Jean, for allowing me to participate in this panel. So I'm Emmanuel Voisin, founder and CEO of Voisin Consulting Life Sciences. What we do in a nutshell is really to work with the biotech and medtech industry to help them go through the regulatory agencies to start with, and then all the way to the market through the payer requirements. And since this type of industry is not so well funded, we need to have expedited methods to develop those products. We need to accelerate the development to de-risk as soon as possible their products. And therefore, we're always seeking for new methods or for methods that will allow us to go faster. And obviously, modeling and simulation is one of them, one of the main ones. And this is the reason why I'm here today.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Sharmila, if you want.
I'm Sharmila, Anadasabapathy, and very happy to be back here, and thank you for tolerating me again. I am a practicing gastroenterologist and a clinical and translational researcher who does international clinical trials. And so bench to bedside development of devices and then implementation of those devices in different settings. And we have used the twin along this pathway.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sébastien, Regulatory Affairs Manager at Dassault Systèmes. Background in electronics. I'm working in the medical devices field since more than 10 years now. Prior to Dassault Systèmes, I used to work at GMED, which is one of the two notified bodies in France. Notified bodies are companies who are working with manufacturers to support them to affix the CE mark on their product, and in order to put into the market the medical devices in Europe. And yes, and I'm specializing more on the active medical devices, specifically software defined as medical devices.
Thank you, Sébastien. So as you can see, really diversified. So let's start here to discuss a little bit further, and maybe I will start with you, Sharmila. You are a physician, and when we discussed some time ago, really you came with this comment because you have described the current medical practice as being more art than science. Very interesting. So you mentioned that the virtual human twin will drive towards more science, but of course will rely on access to patient data. So how do you see weighting the ethical consideration when constructing or using the virtual twin, particularly regarding the informed consent and the data privacy? Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first part, the art as much or more than science. So when we see a patient and when we make clinical decisions, there's a fundamental level of knowledge that we all have, which is empiric, right? That's data-based as physicians. But then there's the individual patient. They may or may not fit entirely into that model or that data. And then that component, that gap is where the judgment and the art comes into it. And what we have noticed is that experienced physicians can bridge that gap more quickly, and novice physicians are challenged to do that. And when you get to new devices and developments, particularly that use generative AI or computer-assisted diagnostics or a physician assist, what we have seen is that the experts rely upon their art, rely upon their clinical judgment and impression, but newer physicians will rely almost completely on the computer-assisted diagnosis. But among all physicians, when you have that assist tool, when you have that model in your hand, their confidence was higher. In fact, even with experienced physicians, the confidence was high enough that they would make a diagnosis and felt confident treating immediately at the point of care. And we've done these studies, and it's fascinating to look at. And I would say confidence in one's judgment and decision-making is an invaluable thing. But when we think of ethics and the regulatory considerations, we have to remember that the expert and the novices and the profile of those physicians or users in different countries varies significantly. But the ethical and regulatory considerations have to be upfront. So when we look at development or implementation of a new device in a new setting, the first piece is to always do an implementation analysis of the environment. What is the trust in the technology? What is the trust in the physicians? What are the cultural and religious biases? And in the midst of all this, you have to ensure that certain ethical principles are upheld. Respect the dignity of the patient, respect the judgment of the physician, and always move towards equity and improvement of the healthcare system. But if we do this and we adhere to that, then we're, I think, headed in the right direction.
Very interesting. And I know you are really truly a citizen of the world. You know, you're driving an organization that is present, I think, in more than 60 countries. So how do you see, you know, in terms of difference and challenges and opportunity when you look at it from those different geographical angles? And what does it mean?
Yeah, I think it gets to the relevance of evaluating the cultural landscape, the biases, the beliefs in every community that we go into initially, right, before you go. So we know what those are. It also gets to the importance of relying on institutions that have very solid ethical and regulatory structures in place that apply to other countries that they affiliate with. And universities actually often have this. So when we do a study in another country, we do it under an umbrella IRB. And the standards are those of our standards. And so when we do it in the field, we are upholding those standards effectively. So I think this is critically important. But what we've noticed is that the same beliefs, trust, and values in a physician in Texas will be very different from one in Botswana or Argentina. And so that needs to be looked at an individual level. So.
And you have a way to capitalize on this between those different geographical differences that you have seen to enrich the global approach that you are developing?
I think that is where having an assist, a model that bridges that gap in clinical care and overcomes some of the capacity issues, because in so many countries you are relying on novices or you are relying on non-physicians, right, to deliver the care. I think that's where the opportunity is.
Interesting. So knowledge capitalization on it. Thank you. Very interesting. Maybe now going to switching to Emmanuel. So you are running a large company, which is a regulatory partner. I think that's the way I understand it from your company, to multiple, both in biopharma and medical device. And maybe you can share with us some projects that you've been involved and where the virtual human twin has been of value added into those projects.
With pleasure. Let me try and find a sampling of various methodologies that were used. I'd like to start with the first example where methodology was validated in order to create an external control arm to a study. We're here in atrial fibrillation with anticoagulant, and we are with Baylor and Medengin being in Finland. They have access to the Nordic databases. So they collected healthcare data, e-case records from those databases, And then the company performed a clinical trial in real patients with a couple dozen, not many. And then these patients were compared to matching data coming from a huge pool of 3,300 pooled patients with matching characteristics. So basically, the idea was really to create the placebo control arm completely and validate it. And this is what was done. So there were hurdles and there were difficulties. Among the difficulties, obviously, to match all the variables is almost impossible, but then you use estimations based on statistical methods. Another problem was the timing of the point collection. But at the end of the day, the method was validated, published, and now the external control arm is being used in further clinical trials and can be reused ad libitum. So I think that's a striking example. Second example, a prediction of the disease itself. And here I'm speaking about a small French company, French biotech company, Exaltis, working with in silico trials that you all know, and as the modeler. And here they were able to predict the course of the disease, therefore generating placebo data in addition to the existing ones, strengthening the value of the study, and therefore strengthening the therapeutic value of the product. So here again, we have a real plus of modeling in a study that may not have been convincing to the regulators without that. And one last example will be predicting the dose. That's kind of, frequently, I shouldn't say frequently, but that's being used. And this is the Sotalol case where they were able to predict it's a PK/PD model, and they had an escalating dose, the study that was already performed. Using this study, the PK/PD model was based on generating data that allowed to predict the IV loading dose that were in cardiorenal and were in chronic disease. So predict the IV loading dose and the subsequent oral doses for the treatment of the patients. And the beauty of this example is that the whole thing was led by a collaboration between sponsor and model-informed drug development group at FDA. So this group, MIDD, is outstanding. You probably all know it, but it's clinical pharmacologists on one side, it's epidemiologists and statisticians on the other. They work together with the sponsor through very, very frequent meetings and collaboration. So it's since we are in a case-by-case setting here with the modeling and simulation. So basically, all together, they succeeded in bringing data that was compelling, and at the end of the day, the FDA approved it. So I think it's a very good illustration.
Thank you for sharing this practical example. And I think I'm always impressed with, there are so many formats. When you talk about the twin, such diversity. And I think this is bringing to the discussions that happened since yesterday on multi-scale and multi-physics, and bringing together after, those different formats of the twin that, in fact, is a morphing organism. Yeah. So, in fact, what you have described here, we start to see that in some cases, the virtual human twin is an opportunity now, start to raise, become a reality. The question, do you have an idea how we could go from being a specific opportunity to become really a cornerstone, changing, implemented capacity?
So, in order to achieve that, you need to overcome challenges. I could cite challenges forever, but let me focus on a couple of them. Number one is the investors. Why? Because I'm speaking in an environment of biotechs and medtechs, so I'm really into convincing investors to bring the funding to these guys. And investors do not yet all believe in modeling and simulation. So we end up in situations where we have a letter from FDA following a meeting at FDA. This letter says you can proceed for your pivotal trial in silico. Well, we needed 2 in that case, where we were in cardiorenal with a wonderful division, wonderful MIDD group. And really, the investors could read the FDA allowed to proceed to 1 in silico trial and 1 real trial as the 2 well-controlled studies to get approval. And they did not invest. So this is, for me, dramatic, but that's my challenge number 1. It's challenge number 2, and you all know that, it's the availability and the quality of the databases. You know, the data need to be, well, the set of data need to be complete, comprehensive, clean, and this, let's say, very seldom happens. So you end up with having to use other methods to finalize your analysis. That's obvious, yeah. Another hurdle, I would say, is the guidelines from the regulatory agencies and the health technology authorities, because the FDA has issued guidance. However, they're kind of, I shouldn't say embryonic, but they're on their way to being great and very, very useful. For now, we work with FDA on a case-by-case basis because the guidance doesn't suffice by all means. And more guidance will come. We cannot ask for everything right now, but it'll come. EMA also. The ones that are lagging behind are the HTA bodies in Europe. These guys haven't done much, and it's a problem because modeling and simulation is more than necessary in access to market demonstration of proof of evidence. So HTA bodies should be doing much more. Also, well, one that I have to mention is the GDPR, which is really a nightmare. You know, if you want to look into the GDPR, you end up in that labyrinth of things. You have black and white, you have gray and gray. You just don't know what to do and where to go. So here you are. And for sure, the last one, because I have to stop, but the last one would be to determine if the model is fit for purpose, because that's more technical, and this is what we discuss with FDA and with whoever is evaluating. But this is the key, the cornerstone problem in using in silico methods. I'm stopping there because there's more.
Very interesting. Now I think this is, you know, the daily life of what we need now to achieve and to overcome to go to the next step and go to broad adoption. So I think now, Sébastien, Emmanuel was bringing more cases coming from the drug industry, and maybe we can talk here about the medical device view on this one. So. What do you think the virtual twin approach can bring as benefit into this part of the industry?
So yes, I will talk maybe more about medical devices, but as you said, that's the same. We have the same regulation, even if there is specific regulation for medical devices, the MDR and the IVDR, specialized for the IVD. We have also the RGPD to be faced. We have the Data Act, the Cyber Act, the AI Act, which will be challenging for the next years. But I'm thinking that virtual twin could be, I think, a benefit regards to that, even if that's challenging, because yes, we talk about regulation, but behind these regulations, we have many guidances. You talk about the FDA guidances. In Europe, we have the MDCG, which are the guidances coming from the European Commission. And behind the guidances, we have also the standards. So that's dozen of text we need to follow. And to give an example about your question, I'm thinking about clinical evaluation, for example. When we talk about the clinical evaluation, in Europe we have two main possibilities. That's the same regards to the US. I read an FDA guidance this morning, and that's the same. So the two pillars are, so for sure we can perform, regards to the clinical evaluation, we can perform clinical trials. So that's questioning about the ethical, but also clinical trials cost for manufacturers and takes time. And we have a second possibility describing in the MDR to follow the literature by explaining that if there are in the literature some evidences which don't need to redo clinical trials, for sure we can use this way. But on a way, that's the same. It takes time. It takes time for the physician also, because European is pretty clear about the fact that even if we thinking about just gathering documentation, that need to be done by someone who knows about the therapeutic area. So that's performed oftentimes by physicians. And so it takes time, it's costly also, and so on. So regards to the virtual twin, I think that could maybe, and for sure we could provide a third route, because it's, I think, something between the clinical trials, because virtual twins can perform, and we discussed about yesterday, and so on. But it's something between the full clinical trials and the full documentary approach, for sure, with more evidences, with more supporting information. So I think it could be, yes, a great benefit for the regulatory pathway.
And I had a question that, you know, when we started to see virtual human twin innovation reaching the market, started to see this qualification happening, being created, SIMD, software as a medical device. So basically, the classifying, you know, by default as medical device. Do you see this as, you know, an opportunity? How do you react to this fact, to this classification, software as a medical device?
Yes, surely. When we discuss about SIMD, as you said, software defined as medical devices, we have many stakeholders beyond this project. We have physicians, for sure. We have researchers. We have engineers. We have legal stakeholder, and so on. And beyond this all process, I could say, we have a couple of people, regulatory affair manager, quality manager, and so on. And so, yes, I could, using by the software, I think it could break something very beneficial. To take an example, in the European Commission, in the European regulation, we have to mitigate the risks as far as possible. That's the same in US, for sure. And to mitigate the risk, the regulations are pretty clear. They say that manufacturer, designer, engineer who are working on the software need to reduce the risk by design. That's the main purpose. The second possibility, if it's not possible to reduce the risk by design, it's to provide the information by alarms. Alarms means audible signals. We can thinking about the ventilators, for sure. But it could be visible signals. And the visible signal, the color of the visible signals are standardized. And finally, at the end, if we cannot do by design and by alarms, the finally option is to provide information in the user manual, in the labeling. And we know that user manual are not never read. I don't think. And I think it could be a benefit to use software and virtual twins, because I think it's another route also to, because I'm talking about all the stakeholders. The virtual twin can gathering data, collecting data, and sharing data. And with that, between the physician and the patient, between the physician and the hospital, all this information could be could bring something which could be finally supporting by design, which is the state of the art. Providing information on the mobile phone for the patient, for example, it's something I think that could be benefit because it's providing by design. So definitely yes.
So thanks for sharing all your thoughts. I think here in the room and also online, as we broadcast, the event, we have the people who have very different level of maturity with the virtual human twin, understanding and usage. And as we discussed here, regulatory and ethics are must. You need to address it. It's not an option. And therefore, as you are expert in the field, what would you say as an advice or recommendation for people, when they are entering into the virtual human twin world? Don't know who wants to start.
Yes, happy to. In practice, enhance, don't replace the doctor, and enhance, don't replace the picture of the patient. But one other piece of advice, as someone who does clinical trials are far from perfect. And part of the reason we have post-market failure is because they're done in academic centers, in universities, in a very ideal environment with very motivated patients. And the minute you take it into the community or another setting, the efficacy drops, right? But if the twins and those models can be used to simulate a real-world setting in conjunction with clinical trials, that is a huge asset, and I think we'll see a lot less post-market failure.
Interesting.
Well,
Emmanuel?
I would say, in the area of drug development, for example, I would say educate all the stakeholders, because there's so much skepticism due to the fact that people don't know what it is, and when they don't know, they're afraid, so they back up, and it can be extremely deleterious. So educate and tell them, no, this is not a dream, this is the reality, and we are going to live with this with the twins in mind for the rest of our lives and beyond. So educating the whole panel of people around us is one, and promoting in clinical research. But also, I would say, let's be careful, because we always underestimate the multidisciplinary character of what we're doing. Meaning, we always think that 3-4 people, it's not 3-4 people together, it's 30 people together, 300 people together. And when I say people, I'm meaning expertise 1, expertise 2, expertise 3, all the way. And there is so many expertise involved in what we do in terms of, specialties. It's incredible. And we always forget 1 or 2 or 3 or 10, and it can create blockage. So think carefully before you start. Multidisciplinary teams. Who am I forgetting?
Excellent. Sébastien, last word?
Yes, same answer. As you said, educate. I will say anticipate as soon as possible, because we have on innovation, which is very interesting, and because regulation coming oftentimes after the innovation, and because we are seeking an innovation, yes, and I think to anticipate as far as possible is a good pathway to get through the regulatory which are currently in progress. We're talking about the AI Act, which was drafted earlier in August, but which will be effective in few years. So definitely anticipating is a good way for regulation.
Thank you. Well, I think thank you for you three. I think this was a very rich, lot of thoughts, to digest and to put in practice as we are entering, and starting. We are only at the beginning of the virtual human twin area. Therefore, a lot to do and taking all of this brilliant advice into consideration.